So let's start with, why should you even think about succession? Why is it important? And I'm going to go back and talk about the evolution of CEO behaviors in terms of how they engage with the company. In the beginning, you are a player, maybe only a player in the early stages of your company. But as you grow, a lot of CEOs do sort of move from strictly player, top salesperson, top accounting person, marketing person, engineering person, whatever your gift happens to be, to play CEO and. So they retain the player job and the CEO job. And that's pretty typical. That's one of the key interventions we do when we first start working with somebody, is to look at their time in terms of, are you actually doing the CEO job, or are you doing the and job, which is CEO and whatever your original sort of functional role was, or maybe two or three of them potentially. As we evolve, we move to a full CEO job where I've got people doing all the functional roles, and I'm able to provide oversight, figure out what's next, strategy, partnerships, acquisitions, sort of bigger moves to change the performance of the company. And then you might envision a move to chair at some point, with the CEO or president running your business. And then sort of the ultimate evolution is to owner, where the business is an asset in your portfolio. And the first thing to realize when you're contemplating succession is that the strategic context of the business dictates the best succession candidates. The strategic context dictates the succession candidate. What do I mean by that? There's a couple of factors that are relevant. One is, how is the business performing? If it's performing pretty well and growing, that's one position. If the business is not performing well, in other words, it's struggling, it's got cost issues, it's not really where it needs to be, that's a different issue. Or the market has shifted, and strategically, the business is going to have to make a real step function change to be successful. So 86% of all CEOs come from the inside. So odds are your successor works for you right now, or will at the point you start thinking about this. They are ideal when the business is performing. In other words, if I want more of the same, get somebody from inside, because they know the business, they know what we've been doing, they know the playbook. And I don't need dramatic change, I need incrementalism. And an insider will generally be better at the sort of incrementalism of make it a little better, a little better, a little better, shift here, a little better, a little better. When things are going well, that's kind of what you want. And particularly as if a board is involved in that decision, realize boards are risk averse. And so they're going to want that person. They're not looking for the big dramatic change unless it's absolutely dictated by the business. So the good, conservative, appropriate, and 86% of the time, they go for an insider to carry on with what we've got going on. They are a low risk option. The nature of the business will also dictate the candidate. When we talk about successors, the thing to remember that the successor should come from the center of the business. Successor comes from the center of the business. So low recurring revenue, meaning a lot of sales, you probably want a sales marketing type leader in your business. If you're a high recurring revenue, meaning it's a lot about delivery, customer retention, and so forth, you might want more of an operationally driven person leading that business. Let's talk about outsiders for a little bit. So outsiders are a possibility. It's about 14, 15% of all succession. It's generally done when there is a problem. We need a strategic shift. The business needs to be turned around. There's a fundamental issue in the business. And or there just are no internal candidates. We did a really crappy job of succession development, and we don't have anybody ready to go internally. So we've got to go outside. It's not the best answer for all the risk factors that I've indicated. There's going to be a learning curve. We don't know this person. We don't know their pluses, their minuses. And look, in a couple of hour interview, everybody can look pretty good, right? I mean, I can clean myself up and talk the right words for a little while. Everybody can. So the social network of the candidate and the board intersecting is really, really important for verifying if you've got a good person in front of you or not. If you cannot verify, I'd be careful. It is costly and risky to bring in an outsider. So that's why it's only 15%, right? Because we don't know them. They got to learn the business, particularly in a complex, diversified business. That's extremely hard. I'm going to lose productivity of that CEO for 6 to 12 months before they're any kind of decent to run my business. In the case of underperformance, let's just pick on that one for a second, because in terms of outsider, it dictates what kind of outsider you want. If the underperformance is revenue underperformance, you're going to want a sales and marketing person. If the issue is operational performance or cost reduction, you want somebody either financial or operational. And so what we recommend is, and this is not just for the CEO successors, but all sort of director plus level, is regular talent evaluation using a 9-box methodology, which we can teach you later if you don't know it, including very clear conversation around developmental needs of that person. Regular board or executive team conversation. If you don't have a board, you got it. Maybe you do it with your CEO peer group or your coach or whoever, but you need to have a third party looking at this question besides just you on a regular basis. Below you, you can have the team have that conversation as a good protocol, and you should do it on a regular basis. So let's talk about how you develop that candidate. So first of all, they have to be a performer in their role. They need real work experience in your business. They need firm specific knowledge. And they need, and let me go there for a second. One of the issues is because we tend to organize around functions that my senior functional leader doesn't have general management exposure. So the organization gets in the way of me developing a full-blown GM/president/CEO, whatever you call it, right? The question is, how do I get them the other vantage points that are in the business that are relevant? And so one is cross-functional teaming. When I've got, for example, I'm doing an ERP deployment and it's going to touch every department in the organization, I might take a high pot and I let them run that business. They'll run that initiative because they're going to build social capital across the business. I'll talk about that in a minute. They'll learn about the other needs of the other parts of the business, and that'll broaden them out, right? Let's say I've got a sales knucklehead who I plan on promoting or is a candidate, and they're financially a little stunted. I might rotate that person onto a financial project to give them exposure. But the other one I talked about before about social capital. And the social network of the board intersecting the social network of the candidate. So that's really, really important. And it needs to be a bit engineered. It doesn't happen casually. So the first is their social capital within the business is important, meaning other people in the business view this person as a leader, not simply because they have a title. The other social capital is external social capital. And that has to be developed. And so, for example, my last company was an international business. And my social capital in this business, I probably had better social capital in England, Japan, China, Europe than I did in America. Like in my local community, nobody knew who the heck I was. Nobody. I had almost zero social capital locally because I just didn't spend any time in the local community. I didn't meet people, not that it was Rotary, but other networking clubs or other events or charity stuff, or I did that globally, not locally. And so when I shifted to this business, which has a little more of a local footprint or national footprint, all of those global social capital I had built up was worth zero. I talked about, modeling is one of the other elements of development. And so as you get a succession candidate, they're going to model the bosses they've worked for, and maybe you as the CEO, if you're the boss, but that's limiting. Like you got one bag of tricks and it's awesome, but that ain't all the tricks that are in the bag. And so part of what's effective is giving them exposure to other CEOs. This is why being on another board, particularly a for-profit board, is really powerful. They see how another board operates. They see how another CEO operates, and they go, I like how she did that. I'm going to steal that idea and I'm going to use that in my personal bag of tricks, right? But a CEO peer group has the same impact. They get 7 or 8 other CEOs, high performers. They've all got their ways of doing things, their ways of thinking about things. It's going to develop, broaden them, and make them a better candidate. In the case of you as a founder, you might want to stay on as chairman of the board if there is a board, but you'll always be owner. And I would say, think about it like it's an asset I own with somebody else running it. You're not going to be looking to dive into that business on a regular basis. In fact, you shouldn't. In fact, if you are, there's a problem, either with you or with the business, one of the two. It may be a personal issue. So owner is a great job to have. You collect the checks, the business runs. If you've got an A player running it for you, life is good. But there is another place to sit, which is on the board. Now, there are positives and negatives here. Normally, a former CEO moving to the board is done as like a reward in many companies. Thank you for good service. We're going to give you a board seat, pay you some money, keep you a little bit involved. It'll be lovely. It is got an incredible suppressing effect on the successor. That is super negative. You know, the sort of big takeaway should be start now, find those high pots, invest in them. Succession is a continuous process. And even if I've invested in somebody to become a succession candidate, let me just tell you, there's a risk that I've coached them up, I've gotten them ready, and the job hasn't opened up yet. Like, I'm not ready to go for whatever reason. And so they're going to leave because they believe, and they're right, they're ready for a CEO gig. We've made them ready, and I could lose them. That is a real risk.